Next, we have Mrs. Khvoin. She is the head of BAJ Information Service, as well as the editor of the organization's website. At the moment, the issue of violations of the journalists or the rights of journalists is at the core of her work. So please welcome Mrs. Khvoin.
Добрый день всем. Спасибо за возможность.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the possibility to talk about the situation in Belarus. I think if I speak in detail, it will take too much time. That's why I will stop some most important, interesting, if I can use this word, cases. The first thing that I would like to draw your attention to is that today is October the 20th, and it's the 16 years anniversary today from the moment when Belarusian journalist Veronika Cherkasova was murdered. It's been 16 years, and the authorities still did not find out who are the guilty, and the case is suspended. Why am I saying this? I'm saying that the attack on media, on the journalists, it's not the problem of this year. It's been done for a long time, for years, and during every political campaign, the repression only intensified. And because this year the political election campaign, the presidential election, was quite unusual, so the events after it are also unprecedented for Belarus. So the relations, again, if I can use this word, with the journalists and the media community are also unusual, and the scale of repression is huge. Yeah, the main thing. So I can point out that this year, after elections, journalists face real fire injuries. Bash registered 3 cases when journalists, girls, in 3 cases were women, and when they were wounded, some received like light wounds, and some others, it's been already 2 months since the injury, and still Natalia Lubnevskaya, a journalist, hasn't recovered fully. In her case, this is Nasha Niva, journalist. In her case, she was shot deliberately by a rubber bullet. It was the daytime, and a person with weapons shot a rubber bullet at her. Maybe it sounds not very scary, but it turned out that there is very bad recovery problems, like there is tissue necrosis, and many things like this. So people in Belarus hope to be peaceful towards journalists as well, and Bash, Belarus Association of Journalists, monitors violations of the rights of journalists. We documented a lot of cases of violence against journalists. Some of them can be called torture, absolutely. I determined this torture. We fixed 56 cases as of today when journalists were beaten brutally. Some of them spent a night in some gym on the knees, facing with his face on the floor. Some of them had to sleep on iron beds without any mattresses or anything. There was a girl who was beaten by a prison guard brutally, and she had to apply to hospital afterwards and spend some time in hospital. So there were many cases like this. Now the authorities changed their tactics a bit. We do not see such brutality towards journalists, but we see other things. During last weeks, because maybe you know that protests are still happening in Belarus. And last week, the authorities changed their policy. They decided to just isolate journalists. What does it mean? It means they detain journalists massively, like in dozens. Last weekend, the previous weekend, they detain dozens of journalists. Then they sent them to detention centers, like to jail for 10 or 15 days. This weekend, some journalists were detained and they received 15 days in jail each. The girl received 13, so this was kind of mercy for her. So like half of the month of their life would be just kind of deleted. So the situation is that according to the law, to be able to cover mass events, journalists are supposed to be like marked with badges, with vests, etc. So they should be visible. But the situation is that when you actually mark yourself, you become the target because this word press on the vest actually makes you a target, and the police would actually easily hunt for you and detain you. So that's why many colleagues, they either try to not be in the crowd and they try to enter the apartments of the residents of houses somewhere close to be able to shoot from above, from the windows, or they just try to be part of the crowd, not to put on any vest, to be able to film something. In the regions, it's more difficult because everybody knows who the journalists are. So police also knows who you are, and they don't really care if you're in the vest or not. They will know for sure who you are. So now we witness this huge wave of detentions, and it's obvious that the authorities are going to use this tactics further on, because there was this wave of violence after the elections. It was against everybody, journalists and general public. Then there was the point when journalists were just detained during the protest, and then they would be released, so they wouldn't be able to film anything. Then they canceled accreditation of practically all foreign journalists. Only some selected group kept the accreditation. For instance, TASS journalists, Novosti journalists, so all Russian media. Of course, Russia Today, they have their special position here in Belarus. And now, when accreditation was taken away from foreign journalists, now we have this new stage when they started isolating journalists for these like 2 weeks. So the law just does not work in Belarus, and they just put journalists to prison. So this is how it is. There is one unique case, and we still do not understand what happened. We are waiting for the person to come out of jail. We don't understand what happened. There was this girl, Alina, a journalist. She was sentenced to 15 days, and she was supposed to be released. And they just sentenced her to another 15 days, even without being released. So she is serving those 30 days in jail right now, and we do not know why. We'll have to wait until she comes out and tells us about this kind of biased approach to her. Well, this is the bad news that we have, and for the good news, maybe I have to say some good news. The good thing is that now we observe in Belarus also an unprecedented wave of solidarity of regular general public towards journalists. Lots of words of support. Many people just thank them during protests, give them flowers. They allow them to go into their apartments. Just strangers open their doors of their houses for the journalists so that they could film and take pictures. Also, when the riot police was dispersed in the crowd, many people opened their doors for the journalists so that they could just stay there. in a shelter while those stun grenades were launched, etc. So solidarity is a good thing, but the bad thing is that it appeared only now, because if society was ready before, if it acted before in a different way, maybe we wouldn't face such a situation today. During this online meeting, we got just news, online conference, we got two news about media. One is that the biggest TV channel in Cyrillic segment, Nexta, maybe some of you are subscribed to Nexta channel. So the court recognized it as an extremist channel in Belarus. That means that non-citizens of Belarus, it means that citizens of Belarus cannot share the content of this Telegram channel. Media in Belarus cannot even mention the logo and cannot mention the channel. And all media that published information from this channel, or citizens who shared the content of this channel in Belarus, will have to look through their feeds and delete all this information, because fight with extremism is also a tool of fighting other-mindedness, fighting other opinions, fighting wrong messages. We've had enough cases when people were held liable for some past information. For instance, a person would make a post, several years ago, before some content would be recognized as extremist. Nevertheless, they would fine the person for that. So I think now it would be a real task for everybody to look through their feeds and try to delete this, because a lot of people shared information from this channel, because this is the most popular information channel, and there was a lot of content from users as well, and videos on Next channel was always had this logo on it, and I think that the fact that they made not only content but also the logo of the channel extremist. This was done for the public not to be able to share the news. So these are the most fresh, the freshest news. Also coming back to those injuries, I told you about 3 girls who were injured. One of them is photographer Lena and after being injured, she went to hospital, and there are procedures. Medical workers have to report it as something accompanied, with the criminal action. So police came to her, invited her to write a statement. She did that, and as a result, of her mother's apartment is being searched right now. So she was injured. Now she's. The police considers her a witness on the criminal case about mass disorder, and that's why the police came with the search to your house. So you are being beaten, you are being injured, you write a complaint to police, and then you become victim of this repressive machine. So yeah, that's another thing. So now the information agenda and the demand for media, just as any country where such events are happening, the demand is really high for the media. No matter how the authorities try, citizens are looking for information, and they will look for it and they will find it. And by using repressive methods to mass media, they just push out people to the gray information space. That's what previous speakers were talking about. They push people out of the gray zone of information, where information is not checked, is not verified, where authors do not have to comply with some ethical or professional standards, and we can say that the authorities damage themselves because they didn't manage to block Telegram channels even after elections, even during the complete internet blackout. This way, they pushed the audience into the Telegram space. But besides official mass media Telegram channels, there are many channels whose authors are unknown and who do not bear any responsibility. They can publish, anything there. But this is how it is now. Well, if you have any questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Khvoin, for this report and sharing your perspective on the current situation in Belarus. Does anyone have any question for Mrs. Khvoin?
Let me just confirm huge respect to Belarus journalists who are working under these conditions right now, and wish the best of luck and health. I have one question. You mentioned that they are being detained very often. After they are freed, do they go back to their previous job and normal journalistic work, or do they, if you know, of course, if you have this information, do they just continue work after they are out, or are they more scared? Or if you could tell, if you know how it works after they leave the jail or police station, or how it's called. Thank you.
Спасибо за хорошие слова. Ну, я думаю, что...
Thank you for your kind words. Well, I think that all journalists, people who decided to kind of link their life to their profession, they would continue doing their job because what else can you do? Yes, they are freed from jail and they continue their jobs, but of course it demoralizes you. We cannot say that everybody is in good mood here. Of course not. There is pressure. I haven't heard about any cases when people would say, I will not continue my journalism job, although I know that some online media outlets, they asked their journalists, like, do not go to protests to cover them, but take information from open sources, because they have a small team, and if one or two journalists are detained, they would not be able to work. Also today I learned that editor-in-chief of one of the media left Belarus because there was pressure. Police visited the office. Maybe just this person was, scared for her safety or freedom, because nobody wants to go to jail for this. As far as I know, everybody works. Maybe some journalists or some media outlets do not send so many journalists to cover protests. As far as I know, some media do not send girls to cover protests. Well, I mean, they can do it if they want to, but the media at least try not to assign girls to such assignments.
Thank you. There's one more from our keynote speaker and organizer, Ms. Lena. How does the media use the user-generated content?
Да, вижу. Спасибо, Лена. Сейчас, да, вот, кстати...
Yeah, it's a good question. There is a problem with the work of journalists at mass protests. Mass media, large media such as Onliner, By, Nasha Niva, Euro Radio, all the leading media, I think it's the same in the regions. They addressed the audience through their social media pages, asking people to send their videos, their reports from the protests, from the place of events. There are many of them. Of course, mass media verify this piece of information. So yes, citizens journalism is a real support for professional newsrooms just because of the conditions of work and the threats that exist. That's why, yes, we do publish such content. Of course, you know, this is not full-fledged information because citizens do not send full-fledged articles, but just because the Telegram channels are so high now in numbers, and because mobile internet is still switched off every Sunday, and Telegram somehow helps to kind of still get, you know, some information. If many websites are blocked and Telegram channels work, and they get subscribers, and that helps to publish the news very fast, and the readers see the picture of the day and what's happening, in which district, what kind of stun grenades are launched there, for instance. Did I answer your question?
Yes. So she writes, thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for replying to all those questions and for your very impressive presentation.